Hey guys, it's Miss Butler coming to you guys again. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys about counterclaim and rebuttal. We've already talked about counterclaim a little bit. That's your although in your thesis statement. We've already talked about how you figure out your opponent's best argument, and now I'm going to show you how to use that best argument against them in a counterclaim paragraph. So a little bit about what you already know. We've already looked at counterclaims in creating our thesis statements. It's the best argument from the other side. It's your although. Now we're going to use that best argument against your claim and turn it to your advantage. This is kind of like we talked about how Eminem did in the rap battle. He basically turned all of his opponent's arguments back against him by sort of acknowledging it from the beginning and saying, yeah, that's your best argument, and then basically taking those arguments away from them. So I'm going to show you how to do that today. So counterclaim and rebuttal. In a concession, not like concession stand, but in a concession, you're acknowledging that certain opposing arguments have some truth. In other words, you're telling the other side, yeah, I understand you've got a point, but I've got a better point. The rebuttal explains how this does not weaken your argument. This makes you sound open-minded. It makes you sound kind of like this. If you were talking about how teachers don't want cell phones in class and you were going to argue for cell phones, you might come up with something like, most teachers don't want cell phones in class because they cause problems, but, and then you would go on to explain how they can be useful. Or another example, you might go into like, others might argue and explain what their argument is, but there is a possible solution to the problem, so you address that issue. So concession and rebuttal happens all the time. How many times have you been in a discussion with someone? Maybe you're arguing for something with your parents, and you remember saying, yeah, that's true, but this is concession and rebuttal. That's when you're acknowledging that there is a problem with your argument, but then you're explaining why you're still correct. So in a rebuttal, she said, but, return to your original argument based upon careful reasoning. So you have to go back to that main claim, and then you show why the counter argument is mistaken, and you acknowledge it, but you show why it is less important than your reasons, like your becauses. This is basically telling your people, yes, I'm with you, I see that, but I've got a better idea. So key phrases to use are but, yet, however, nonetheless, and still. But I'm going to even show you a formula that makes this even easier. So where does it go in your essay? It goes like, your essay layout is going to go like this. You're going to have an introduction, that intro paragraph we've been working on with the hook, background, and thesis. Then you're going to have the claim 1 body paragraph that's from your first because. Then the claim 2 body paragraph. Then you're going to have the counterclaim and rebuttal paragraph that I'm going to show you how to do now. And finally, your conclusion. Each one of these will be 1 paragraph for a 5-paragraph essay. So here's kind of your plug and play for the counterclaim paragraph. In other words, you're just going to put in these pieces and this formula will work for you every time. I've put the part in yellow, that is the part that's always going to be there. And then the part that's in brackets is going to be the part that you insert. So the way that it works is you start off the paragraph, and again, this is a short paragraph. It's only maybe 3 sentences, maybe 4 if you have to explain something in more detail. So on the other hand, some people argue, and then you put the counterclaim there, whatever is their best argument there. This point of view makes sense because, and then you explain why they might be considered right. Then, however, that's the part where you explain you're actually right, and then therefore you use a warrant and tie everything together. So therefore, since blah, blah, blah. I'm going to show you how this works on the next slide, so don't panic if you don't understand it yet. And you'll also be given a graphic organizer that shows you how to do this, kind of with spots that you can fill in the blank till you get the hang of it. So one of the things that we talked about in one of our articles was about more time in school. So if I were coming up with a thesis statement and my claim is that students should not spend more time in school, I'm going to give you my thesis statement. Although some argue that students would retain information better, Students should not spend more time in school because children need time to explore on their own, and studies have not shown great increases in learning. So first of all, you see my counterclaim already. Although some argue that students would retain information better, I've got my main claim. Students should not spend more time in school. Then I've got my two becauses. Children need time to explore on their own, and studies have not shown great increases in learning. All right, hopefully that pattern is going to look really familiar to you. To make it into a counterclaim paragraph, here's what you do. You start in with the on the other hand, some argue, that's just like from before, students remember lessons better with more time in school. I've referred back to my original counter argument. This makes sense because students would have more exposure to learning material. I've explained their best reason why. However, students in high-performing schools like Finland spend less time in schools and perform better than United States students. So now I've given my best reason why this is not true. Therefore, since schools in other countries get better results with less time, clearly more time in school is not the answer. So as you can see, I've acknowledged what their argument was. I've explained why their argument has some validity, has some truth to it, but then I have turned it around and said, but here is why you're wrong, or here is why my argument is stronger. And then in the end, I have tied it up with a warrant sentence. So the therefore since pattern is a really, really good pattern for that. And feel free to pause on this page if you really want to take a minute to look at that counterclaim paragraph. So here's the pattern one more time. On the other hand, and then you would insert the counterclaim. That would come from your although in your thesis paragraph. This makes sense because, and then you explain why their argument has some truth to it. However, and that's the part where you get to argue back and say, no, I'm actually right. And then you tie it all together with a warrant. Therefore, and then you go into the since. All right, you will have this pattern on paper, and you'll also be able to ask us questions and figure out how this works. But you should be able to do this with a counterclaim paragraph and then plug that as your other piece to your essay. Good luck, guys.